I'd like to call this November 7th, 2024 Board of Education meeting to order. Mr. Anagnostou, would you take the roll?
Here. Here.
Here.
Here.
And Mrs. Hausum.
Here.
We are all present. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At the beginning of every meeting, we remind ourselves of our strategic priorities. Our 3-year strategic plan reflects our values, beliefs, and hopes for our students, staff, parents, and community. Our priorities are transforming teaching and learning, aligning staff and resources, cultivating culture and climate, and leveraging funding and facilities. Next on our agenda is public comment. I do have one slip from Nolan Mazzefa and Lauren Copeland. So if you would step to the microphone. And Mr. Anagnostou is going to lower the microphone. And Nolan, thank you for joining us today. You may be our youngest public speaker yet, at least in recent memory. If you would please tell us your name and your address.
Like our address at our house?
Yes.
I'm Noah Zepha, and I live on Strongsville, Ohio, Cooper's Run, 12003.
And can you tell us who you're with, for the record?
My mom.
Mom, would you tell us your name for the record?
Lauren Copeland.
Thank you very much. Nolan, you have the floor. Tell us what you want to tell us.
I want a nut-free table for Servar because a lot of kids that have allergies and they're getting scared. So I think we should have one.
Well, thank you very much. I was going to say Mom. Mrs. Copeland, did you have any other comments you wanted to share with us?
He has anaphylactic reactions to nuts, and oftentimes his peers don't take his allergies seriously and wave peanut butter sandwiches in front of his face, and he is afraid when he's eating lunch.
Well, thank you, Nolan, for taking a positive step towards trying to come up with a solution. Dr. Ryba, I think we all can direct you and your team to follow up and bring us a full report.
Yeah, so if you can just clarify what the experience is right now, Nolan, when you go to lunch, where are you sitting?
By my friends?
By your friends, and you're at a table with all of your classmates?
Not all of them.
But yeah, some of them, the ones that fit on your table, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. And so one of the things that you're looking for is a peanut-free table?
Yeah.
Okay. The reason I ask is, I know we've had them in the past, and so, have you ever had a peanut-free table at Sarar?
No.
No, okay. All right, well, that's something we'll take a look at, Nolan, and we'll reach it back out to you and your mom to let you know what we found out and what we can do to help you out, so you have a safe experience at lunch. Now, because we put some rules into place for shared snacks and things in the classroom, so is it just lunchtime that's the challenge right now?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so we'll work together on lunch to see what we can do, okay?
Okay.
All right, thanks so much. All right, thanks, Nolan.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is approval of minutes. Once the computer catches up, there we go. It is part of our consent calendar. Motion to approve the minutes of the October 24th, 2024 regular board meeting. All district video and audio recordings will be a permanent part of the minutes. We now have student wellness and success funds. That's the treasurer's report.
Thank you, Mr. Miko. This is a quick presentation, an annual presentation that we're required to do based on the current biennium state budget, similar to the one we did last year. As part of the 24-25 biennium state budget, the district receives student wellness success funds, and part of that requirement is that we present to the board and the community how we use those funds, and then also post them to our website. So this link will replace the current link. Just to kind of give a background, student wellness and success funds, they were initially approved by the Governor DeWine. That was one of his initiatives when he took office in the 2020-2021 biennium budget. And at that time, they were a separate fund outside of the general fund. Beginning with the 22-23 biennial budget, those were moved to the general fund as part of the state funding formula and just moved from unrestricted to restricted. And then in the 24-25 biennial budget, which we're currently in, they continued the funding through the school funding formula as part of the restricted funds, but also added additional requirements. And those additional requirements are as follows: requires these funds must also include a plan with both a community mental health prevention or treatment provider and another community partner. Plan must be shared at a public meeting, which we're doing now, and posted on the website. Half the funds must be used for mental and physical healthcare services. All of our funds are being used for mental healthcare services, and all existing funds must be spent by the 24-25 school year, which is this school year, and then new funds will allow for a one-year rollover. The allowable uses for these funds that was in the budget bill was for mental health services, physical health services, culturally appropriate prevention services, homeless youth services, child welfare involved youth services, community liaison programming, family engagement activities, and before and after school programming. Just our financial overview. This is from the initial biennium budget, the fund that was outside the general fund. We began receiving those dollars in 2020. In that year, we didn't use any. We carried them forward as we were still developing a plan. And then in 21, through the remaining, through last year when they were finally used, the various uses that we had were Nancy Lowry and Associates, which is now Mindfully, Family First Solutions, the social worker, the two social workers that we're funding, one from PSI and then our current employee. We also had ESC PBIS funds. We added an additional guidance counselor to Kinsner, so every elementary school had their own guidance counselor rather than them sharing between school buildings. In 21 and 22, we had the equity audits, and then in 21 and 22, we had the diversity consultant. So that used up the initial funding that came through the outside the general fund, and then within the general fund, those started coming in year 3. What we're currently budgeted for this year, we had a carryover 127,000. Our allocation's 230, so we have 357,000 of available resources. We're projected to use 295,000 with a carryover into next year of 62, and then the funding for each year. Part of the reason we have a little bit of a carryover is as the years go on, the funding, currently the way it is in the current biennium budget, but this spring the governor will release a new biennium budget, and there might be additional funds there. We'll see how that plays out, but at one point we'll be spending more of these than we'll be bringing in. But it's all within the general fund. It's at least we'll at least have to meet the restricted portion of the spending. What we're spending this year is similar to what we spent last year. Again, we have 10,000 allocated for Mindfully and Family First Solutions. Also, we received a grant for trauma-informed care, professional development for our staff. What the grant covered a portion, and what the grant wasn't able to cover, we're using the wellness funds for. Continue to fund the social workers, the guidance counselor, the ESC the PBIS consultants through the ESC. So that makes up our funding for this year, which is similar to last year. And then the last slide, I'm going to turn it over to Jenny on how the use of funds, the allowable uses are all mental health, but Jenny will give a little bit more insight on the purpose and our community, and who are our community partners for these.
Thanks, George. So just starting up at the top there, with Mindfully and Family First Solutions, we actually have 2 partnerships with 2 different companies that provide mental health services, therapeutic services, really throughout the day for our students within the school. And so we have therapists around the district in every elementary, middle school, and high school. And so what this money allows us to do, mainly that those therapeutic services are paid for through the insurance of the families. But we set aside some funds for families maybe that are struggling or are temporarily without insurance. And so those requests all come through me, so we can keep track of how much we're spending and making sure that we're keeping up with the families, and it's not something that they're on it forever. It's just on it when they need it, or maybe even help with the copay. So it really allows them to get therapy right away, and be seen right away, and then ongoing throughout the year or as long as they need the services. So that's been a huge help in our district. District social workers we've had in place for a while. They partner with both our counselors and Mindfully or Family First Solutions, so they're all talking. And so what the social workers do is they help with wraparound services, working together with the whole entire family, and providing other services maybe that families need, whether it be need help getting health insurance or need help with financial services or something of that nature. They work closely with that. And they also are in our schools and see kids throughout the day, and also are partners with our teachers and our staff as well, to kind of make sure that the student is being served in any way that they need to be served. Elementary school counselors, George said, this just allows more equity to make sure that every elementary school has a counselor. They've been able to provide a lot of direct instruction in terms of lessons that deal with the whole child. And so we have a curriculum for that at the elementary level. And again, it allows our students not to have to wait until the counselor is there on that day. They have services immediately. They've also partnered going on to the PBIS consultants. Many of our elementary counselors are directly involved with PBIS and are taking the lead in that initiative with the partner of our ESC that has the consultants and their guidance. A lot of our counselors are taking the lead to integrate those programs and design those programs with the staff. So that is what we're using the funds for, and it's really been extremely helpful.
And that concludes our presentation, if there's any questions.
Jenny, how do our families know that these services are available for them?
In terms of, I would probably say you're referring to the therapeutic services with Mindfully and Family First Solutions. So yeah, so we have a letter that goes out. All of our counselors are aware of the communication. Our teachers are aware as well, and our administrators. So I send all that information out to them, and then, they're either referred or we're communicating, here's the process you go through. So,
Thank you.
mhm.
Are we going to use up all the money, though, that we get? Is that what you're saying, George?
Yeah, so each year we get about $230,000 that comes through our state funding formula, which it's a restricted, so we're required to spend that much to it. We're allowed to carry over 50% of those dollars into the following year. But this year we'll use, so this year we carried over $127,000 from the previous years. This year, at the end of this year, we'll carry over $62,000. It might be a little bit more. We do allocate $10,000 for Mindfully and Family First Solutions. Last year we used, it was a little bit less. Last year it was about $1,500. So depending on the needs of the students. So we might carry over a little more than the 62. But in the upcoming years, we'll be spending more than as the requirement is.
That's what I'm asking. We're going to end up spending more than what we get from the state
Correct.
because of what they mandate? or is it just?
Just our costs are
because-
going up, that's all,
Oh,
the costs
okay.
associated with it.
Okay, I thought maybe things, okay, thank you.
And these costs are included in our forecast as well. So
Okay.
the restricted amount is included in our forecast, and the out-year expenditures are included as well.
Okay, thanks.
I just have one question. I remember we talked about this one other time, but can we make sure that Mindfully is searchable on our website? It's still not here. Family First Solutions is now. but
Okay.
Mindfully is not.
Is it under Nancy Lowry?
Maybe.
Yeah,
Let's
it could
find
be
out.
under that. They just redid their name to Mindfully now completely, so.
Maybe, let's see.
No. All right, I'll take a look at that, Michelle.
Thank you.
As far as the out years are concerned, I'm correct that the closer we get to 28, 29, we can adjust those numbers as long as we're using them for the allowable.
Right.
Right. So as long as we budget to that allowed amount, it's up to us as a district to decide
Exceed.
where to allocate those funds.
Correct.
And as we're going out, the funds are not going to keep up. And so our needs will, the shortfall between the fund and our needs will just make up with
Unrestricted funds.
non-restricted general fund money.
Correct.
Right, okay.
It's similar to, like, another example, one we don't have to present on it, but there were several restricted funds, and one of them is gifted, for example. So the gifted is about a little less than 100,000, somewhere in that ballpark, and we spend well over that. So it just gets made up. As long as we hit a requirement, we can cover the rest with the unrestricted portion.
What I'm looking at is the PBIS budget in the out years. Now that, I mean, PBIS is somewhat new, but in the out years, hopefully, we're really good at it, and we don't need a consultant as much as we do in the beginning years.
Yeah, and Andy has already started to reduce that. The use of the consultants has changed in terms of their time with us and focus from last year to this year. And that is exactly the goal, is that we built the skills internally to where we don't need the outside consultants. So just as a frame of reference, the outside consultants used to attend the meetings at the building. They used to pre-plan for all the meetings. Now they're just focused on Tier 2 PBIS meetings because that's where our next focus is. They don't attend the Tier 1 ones anymore. They're there if staff needs them, but we're already starting to change that allocation.
Very good. Any other questions for George? Nice job.
Thanks. And that concludes my report.
So next is Superintendent's report. Dr. Ryba.
Thank you, Mr. Micko. So the first thing that we wanted to talk about tonight is obviously about 48 hours ago, we got some challenging news for our district that issue 53 failed. You know, as I know the board knows, I thought it was a great opportunity for our community to get a break on the taxes while continuing to move forward with the great work that we're doing as a school district. But clearly, the community felt differently. And so although that's a hard pill to swallow and difficult to look into the future as to the challenges that this is going to cause, a highly performing, successful district that's already being very efficient with its tax dollars, we are now in this situation, and we've got to plan accordingly to do what's in the best interest of our students, as well as align to the clear feedback the community has given us over the last year in terms of their financial support of our school district, which, to be explicitly clear, we were asking for it to stay consistent with what they have committed to over the past 5 years, and in this last time, to pay less. So that's a challenge when our community says, hey, we are not supportive through the vote. To do that, then we've got to talk about what are our next steps moving forward. So that's a part where we've got to continue to have the discussion, and wanted to share a few things with the board as to what I would recommend to be as components of that discussion moving forward. Because although the levy has failed, our expenses will continue to increase, the challenges and needs of our students will continue to increase, and we still have to address those. They don't go away. And so one thing to just keep in mind is that we officially are going to have our revenue reduced by $10 million starting in the calendar year '25. So George, correct me if I'm wrong, but our budget will have a revenue reduction of $5 million this school year, and then a full $10 million starting next year and every year thereafter. So rough math, if you take a look at that, that's around 11% of our total revenue. So I've used the example before, but if somebody said, hey, you're going to lose 11% of your income as a family, you've got to make some changes. And so that's where we're at right now is $10 million a year. 11% of our revenue budget is a huge amount. And yes, we have a cash balance that we've had to help us get through these out years, but taking $10 million away from that year is just going to have the snowball roll faster and quicker down the hill. So some things that we need to consider moving forward, and just to kind of put out there, I would ask the board to be able to have discussions and provide guidance by our December meeting. There's a lot of work that goes into everything we're going to talk about. And so I believe our December board meeting is on December 12th. So that would be the recommended target that we have. George and Jenny and I and the team are giving clear directions as to what we're doing by December 12th or at the December 12th meeting so we can move forward. So a couple things to consider as you go forward with the plans and we have discussions. First of all, we are overcrowded at 4 of our 5 elementary schools. If we remember and we flash back to a year ago, we were going to put a bond issue on the ballot. We had an elementary facilities planning committee that was together and worked for a year. We had a recommendation. The board voted for the first vote to put it on the issue or put it on the ballot. And with the failure of the '23 levy, we pulled that off. Enrollment has not changed. More kids are there. More kids are coming. We have mobile units at 4 of our 5 elementary schools that are being fully used. That's not going to change. The idea was, hey, let us get our operating expenses intact, and then we will look at a bond issue. We don't have the ability to look at both of these as linear or sequential decisions. We either continue to live and expand in mobile units and put 25 million plus into buildings that are 50, 60, 70-year-old buildings, or we take a look at how are we going to address our facility needs at the elementary level specifically moving forward. So that's a part that we need to consider as a team moving forward. Obviously, we also have to take a look at our operating expenses. I won't speak about it because that's George's expertise. But that $10 million in the 5-year forecast, he has that broken out, but it's going to have a significant effect on us moving forward in the 5-year forecast. So we've got to talk about, we've had 3 levies fail. When we've asked for no increase or less taxes, what is the pathway forward to address operating expenses? There's a cliff that we will get to in the future. Part of that, in terms of operating expenses, is with the failure, we've talked about to continue and meet board policy, our cash balance policy, which says in the 5-year forecast, you need to have 90 days cash on hand. We've shared with the board that we would need to start cutting $3 million or more starting next school year. So part of what the board needs to talk about and consider is, do you want to stay with that metric that's in our cash balance policy? And if you do, $3 million of cuts start next year. Or do you want to have conversations about our cash balance policy, and that would direct how much reduction or if any reductions need to happen and when? Eventually reductions will need to happen, right? Without new revenue, it's going to happen. But the timing of reductions and how much reductions is something that goes hand in hand with that cash balance policy. So those are the considerations that, at least in my list, that we need to have discussions and direction on. And there's a variety of pathways that we've shared a rough draft with you on that are potential areas of focus and a combination thereof of all of them. And so with that, Mr. Mickel, I'll turn it back over to you for further discussion on this topic.
Thank you, Cameron. So I think my intention for this meeting is for it to be conversational, for us to have the opportunity to comment, to ask questions. As Cameron pointed out, we'll need to give direction and make board-level decisions, give marching orders to George and Cameron in the December timeline. I will just start the conversation. I shared some of the comments already, but I'm going to repeat them for the public. So as far as the numbers are concerned, many of you know I like numbers. I went through the numbers. There was one precinct in all of Strongsville that passed the levy.
Which one was it?
Where did it go? 1B. So out of 30 precincts, one of them passed. To put it kindly, the request was rejected widely. There were, compared to the first two requests, the first request failed. The first time we were able to do it as a renewal of an existing levy failed. The second one, we made progress in the right direction. The failure was cut by more than half. We did make some adjustments to it, and not only did it fail, but it failed soundly, and it failed worse than either of the two renewals.
There was a lot more people.
We were comparing
We were at a
presidential
thing
election.
compared to like a primary, and I forget what the other one was, but.
The other.
I'm just saying, like. there
Yes,
was
the other one was the
yeah.
general election of 2023, but that one, obviously not as well-attended, not as, the
Yeah.
turnout was not what it is in a presidential election. And the conventional school wisdom is always, if you want to pass a levy, do it during a primary when nobody votes and get your parents to show up. And I was comfortable saying, you know what, we're going to be honest and forthright with the public, and the presidential election notwithstanding, we're going to tell our story and see if it resonates. And at the end of the day, the voter has spoken, and so we as a board must respond. The thing that I think that weighed on everyone's minds, and we as a board will need to think about, is I think the reevaluation, along with inflation and the current climate of high inflation, the idea of supporting that levy at any level was difficult. The city is going to have these same questions. The Southwest levy passed, the general levy for the city failed. So the same issues, the same concerns, the same questions are going to be had by the city. If you take a look at it from my perspective or from the team's perspective, and Cameron spoke about it, we were in a position to take care of our paycheck, to take care of, we're going to have this income committed by the community so that we can concentrate on education. And so I think the two things that resonate is that idea that we are looking at a 10% paycheck, a 10% cut to our paycheck, and how do we budget that? Along with, there's a financial fella out there called Dave Ramsey, and he talks a lot about a debt snowball. And if as a person you want to get out of debt, you have to build that snowball, and you start paying your debts down, and that snowball grows. I look at the challenge that we have and the decisions that we're going to have to make as the reverse of that debt snowball. We are fortunately in a strong financial position. Everyone knows that. That's been touted. That's been touted to our strength and touted to a reason not to pass this levy, because we are in such a strong financial condition. So again, using that analogy of your paycheck, if you're living paycheck to paycheck and you have a 10% cut, it is a crisis. Because of our financial condition, it is not a crisis today. But going back to that debt snowball, if we do not address it, the snowball continues to turn. And then all of a sudden, instead of addressing it a year by year by year, we have a big hole and we have no reasonable way to fix it, which is a long way of saying that we do need to make some serious decisions. And I would not be in favor of just ignoring the situation. We're going to need to address it. We're going to need to address it from a budget standpoint. But timing is a concern, right? We've said to the community before, if this levy doesn't pass, the things that we would have been in the position to do are, as far as I'm concerned, are off the table. We're not going to be in a position to eliminate pay to participate. We're not going to be in a position to eliminate school fees. We're not going to be in a position to eliminate the half tuition. And in fact, as a board and as a team, I think we need to look at where those dollar amounts need to, whether they need to stay or whether they need to be adjusted. The other comment, there was a disagreement in the community on how to evaluate these requests. And as a board and as an individual board member, it was important to us that this levy is separate from the reevaluation. And so we did reduce it, and it would have been a reduction in taxes, but the Strongsville GOP and the opposition lumped it together as one thing and called it a permanent tax increase. And I think that, whether we agree or disagree, we need to recognize that. And that is along the lines of now we need to look at our other needs. The analogy I was going to, or have been using is you can't look at buying a new house or upgrading your existing house if you don't know what your job is going to look like, right? And in my mind, you wanted to take care of that paycheck first, and then, okay, now we can have that conversation with the community about what do we want our elementary schools to look like for our students. We don't have the time anymore. We're going to have to look at both of those conversations at the same time, which is going to make it even more of a difficult conversation, because the elementary schools the needs are not going to go away. The growth in enrollment is not going to go away. And we're going to, we cannot solve the problem with mobile trailers. The mobile trailers are a Band-Aid. The mobile trailers buys us time, but correct me if I'm wrong, we're predicted another 1,000 students in a 10-year time frame. Those numbers the predictions have been really accurate. They're not changing. We don't have enough mobile trailers to fit another 1,000 students. So we're going to have to, as a board and as an administrative team, begin to revisit those conversations and have them in parallel. And then another comment is with regard to the reevaluation, that conversation, we're going to have to continue to have it because I don't believe that reevaluation problem is fixed. We're going to have to, George and I have had the conversation. I don't see not having another increase in 3 years and having the same conversation and having to have the conversation with taxpayers that yes, the taxes are going up. All of our expenses are going up. None of the fundamentals of our 5-year forecast have changed. Our expenses, just like the homeowners' expenses, continue to rise, and they continue to rise faster than our revenue. So it's not, I don't want anyone to think, well, we got through this reevaluation, next year the bills will come out, people will adjust, et cetera. That problem needs to be addressed if it's going to be addressed in Columbus, and we will be there to advocate for it. Our next near-term priority is the capital budget that starts now. We can congratulate Mike Davila and Tom Patton on their elections, and we look forward to working with them to protect our interests. And I don't see any strong headwinds. Jenny and I were at the update. We are hoping for, counting on Columbus to fully fund the Fair School Funding Act. They're going to have the same challenges everyone else has. And so we're looking at a 10% cut from the local taxpayer. And we're going to find out what the capital budget in Columbus is going to have. And we're going to need the taxpayers to advocate for us also, because the tax money, the income tax that we send to Columbus, we want to get back. And then the last part I was just going to share is, again, and I had this conversation with George a little bit earlier, this is a totally different conversation than we had 13 years ago. 13 years ago, 14 years ago, the budget was so, I don't want to say abysmal, but it was, we were taking payday loans just to make payroll. The thing that is difficult is we see the cliff, but we're not on the cliff now. And we still have time to redouble our efforts, continue that conversation with the community, listen to the community, see if there is something that would adjust. But I firmly believe that our community by and far wants our students to get a good education, and we'll need to communicate with them the cost of that. I've said enough on my soapbox. I open it up to others. Concerns, questions?
All I can say right now is that for me, it's too soon. I'm still feeling all the feelings. And I think there's a lot of information we need to gather from the community in terms of what is the rationale for what thing is the thing that created the no votes. I think there's a lot of options there, and I don't know which one is the winner. So I think we have to do our due diligence and, try to learn those facts. And I think we have to, in the same way we do strategic planning and we look, 5 years down the road, I think we need to do that type of thinking with the way we are going to place and plan our levies and/or bond issues, and not only consider timing and which issue, but also the method by which we can reach that goal. I think we've had a lot of the right strategies at the wrong time, and vice versa. And so I think that in order to be successful, we're going to have to really envision which goal when and how, what are the steps we need to get there. And I don't know yet, but, Cameron has given us a lot of things to think about. And I know I've had community members, multiple already today, reach out and say, here's what I know about the people I know. And so I think we just need to take the time to think all of that through.
I agree, we're at a fork, we're at that junction where we're at the fork in the road. Where are we gonna go from here? And I think we do have to take our time and really, really think hard and not make rash decisions. I'm like you, it's still so fresh and so frustrating and disappointing, but I know, in the end, we'll prevail and we'll come out stronger, hopefully, but I agree, we need to take some time, gather more information.
On a practical note, Laura, you reminded me of this. I really think it's worthy of our consideration to not schedule our board meetings immediately after the election. because we did this last year, and I remember we had the exact same conversation where we were all still kind of lethargic and wounded, and I don't think that makes us super productive. So I think if we shift that board meeting to the week before, or, you know, another week after, and give us more time, it would only be twice a year, I think it would be worth considering.
That's a good idea.
Not that I don't disagree, but, you know, again, hopefully we're not predicting that we're going to be on the ballot every November.
Even if we're not, I think, like, in this particular case, a presidential election can also be stressful. So I
Sure.
don't think it's, you know, just our issue. I know it's been hard, my kids asked even, this is a whole different train of, but they said, Mom, why, we should have gone to school Monday and had off Tuesday, Wednesday. Because from what I heard, things kind of got ugly at some of the schools in regards to the election results. So same story of, it doesn't matter if it's the levy or not, but are there ways we can schedule better around major events?
That resonates. I think that makes sense.
You mean they were having a hard time at school after the election?
I heard at the middle school that the staff had to step in and tell the, like, kids to knock off the conversations because they were aggressive or heated. Sorara reportedly was chanting Trump, Trump, Trump in the middle of class. I mean, there were things that were out of control. And I understand why it happened. I'm not holding the teachers accountable in any way. I'm just saying, maybe we all need space on those kinds of issues.
I don't know, for me, I was out pretty much, well, I was out the whole day. And I think a good way to figure out what people think is to ask them. And I ask a lot of them. And I had a good feeling, actually, and maybe I hit all the really, really nice people, or maybe they just gave me thumbs up because they didn't want to hear me talk anymore or yell at them. I wasn't yelling, I was yelling issue 53, was not yelling at them. But what I found for the people that were very, very aggressive is, and I don't, this will not change. It doesn't matter what we do, our messaging is never going to be loud enough over this. Because all I heard was, you have, and how much do we have? I don't even know anymore. I hear different numbers, but right now we have 77 million and we're not spending it. And I mean, there were people that were literally swearing and yelling, like, you know, this is BS and you have all this money. The problem is that we have a messaging problem and we have a lack of funds to get that message out. 3 times, and I'm not doing it again. I mean, I will vote no. I am not putting anything on the ballot until we figure out a strategy that is a good one. And it's not all over the place and nobody knows what they're doing and blah, blah, blah. And I don't mean that because there's a lot of good people who put money and time and effort. That has nothing to do with that. I'm just saying, you know, the messaging and the way we went about it was just, you know, it wasn't good. And it showed in the end, it showed. And we are outspent. You can't tell me that 3 levies and the messaging from the GOP, they got out there, and I don't know how to get through people to say to them, we're not lying to you. I don't know how to do that. If anyone knows how to do that, please step forward, because it's not going to happen. The only way they're going to see it is if, spend the money down. I'm not going to another levy having people tell me there's $77 million in the bank. If we start cutting things, what is that going to look like? That's just going to look like we're being vengeful. We have all this, then it's going to be, you have all this money, and now you're hurting our kids, or you're cutting paychecks, or you're doing this. The messaging's going to be the same, just in a different level. So, you know, and what I want people, and I hope anybody out there that's listening, I was at all different schools all day long. The people for the GOP This has nothing to do with the Republican Party or whatever. It's these certain people. The people that I met, very nice people, were not from Strongsville. So I want our constituents to realize that the people that were giving the cards out, telling our people not to vote for it, don't live here. Please understand that. These people don't have any skin in the game at all. And so if it fails, they could care less. The lady that I was with was from Summit, and she was like, geez, I don't know. And then when we talked a while, she's like, oh, I feel so bad. Now I understand. So then she started passing them out saying, please don't look at the other side. I agree with this lady. I mean, but that was because I sat there for like 2 hours and had a really nice conversation, and she wasn't there trying to hurt anyone. She was just following orders. She didn't even care. Nobody went to Strongsville. She didn't have kids in the school, so, and I think honestly, the other thing, I think it was a shame that we didn't get any of the Democratic people involved. Like, I sat with really nice people. They were passing out literature. They asked me, why don't you have any literature? We would have passed it out. And they're a very organized group. They were at every school. And we missed that opportunity totally. Right. And it's true, and I don't blame them, because I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, or independent. You have kids in the school. Why are we ignoring a whole segment of people? Doesn't make any sense to me. We should have gone to them, which I would do the next time. I took the lady's name. She said she'd be more than happy to help next time, So these are the people that we should be reaching out to. And we're not.
So just as a clarification, one of the things that is difficult for us as a school district is, and whatever your opinion is, doesn't matter. The law is, we have our hands tied behind our back. So we are not able, as a school board or a school district, to advocate for passage or failure. Now, other groups don't have that, and that's why we do have a group Continue the Excellence. But for us as a board to talk about it now, after the fact, it's failed. So we can talk a little more freely. But before the election, that's all a separate body, but the majority of our message comes from the district. But we do need to address that.
And I would just like to thank, the people who have volunteered their time on that Continue the Excellence. I mean, there was a lot of hard work that went in, and this was unprecedented. Like, we've never lived through having opposition like this with a renewal levy. So I think we were all just trying to learn, how do we, get the message out there right? And when we were beat to the punch that once they got that letter that said we had too much money in the bank, that was it. We could have been writing in the sky, and we would have, I don't think we could have changed minds.
No, I want to reiterate that I know they put money, time, it's not about that. We're outspent and we're outmessaged. That's it. Bottom line, I don't care how you want to spin it or whatever. We didn't have the money. We don't have the funds. We weren't on the phone every 10 minutes, robocalling, and, we're outdone. We're like the little people in a big pond, and it's like.
We couldn't get yard signs. People kept asking for yard signs, and we weren't able to get yard signs for them.
Yeah.
Richard, I have
So-
a question.
But I think I'm going to try to shape some of the conversation.
Can I ask my question first? Because
Sure.
I think it might help that.
Okay.
I know we are limited in what we can say while we're in a board meeting. However, can we invite the Continue the Excellence people here and have them talk about the levy efforts?
No,
We're not allowed to do that? Okay.
no.
Can they come on their own volition?
They can speak at public
That's what I
comment.
mean. That's what I meant, public comment.
Yes,
But they could come on their own volition.
yeah.
And talk about the campaign and some of the challenges that they faced, like the yard signs. they can do that. We cannot.
Correct.
But in all fairness to them, that was the money issue. Like,
Well,
we
but I just
only
want them
have-
to come say it.
Oh, okay.
That's all. Because you're right, but we're not allowed to
I'm not
delve.
allowed to say that?
We're not allowed to delve into the details, I don't think. And so I guess my solution is, I want to hear it from them, because then there are some things I don't know, and I'd sure like to know more. And I think the community would too.
And I think there's some, as a school district, as a board, whatever, there's business that's appropriate at a board meeting. There's nothing to stop people from having conversations outside of board meetings, advocating for or against or anywhere in between. And I think that's the proper domain for some of those kinds of conversations.
Now, I
to-
will add, as the board members, as an elected board, you guys are allowed to have those conversations with the community or with those different organizations on your own. You just can't do it here at a public meeting as you're being paid to, but when you're away from the public meeting as an elected official, you can have those conversations with those different groups as well. And do the advocacy as well outside of a board meeting.
Thank you.
I think one of the biggest questions, or one of the biggest concerns for all of us, is assuming that we spend the money down, that the oppositional groups would then want to approve something that would allow us to build it back up again. Is that a conversation that should or would be having place here? Because I feel like that is a very pertinent issue of, it makes sense if that's the major issue of, there's this much money in the bank, we gotta get rid of this. Well, if we spend it down, is the plan that this oppositional group is planning to then help us get it back to where it needs to be to keep operating
Yeah, we can talk about strategy
at a board meeting?
the financial outlook of the district.
Right.
We can't advocate for a levy, but we could talk about the financial future and how we're gonna get there.
But could we ask questions in terms of like, do these oppositional groups plan to support a levy if our district is struggling to help with the educational needs of the students once this?
Not at a board meeting.
Yeah, I think that goes back into the surveying.
Haley, one of the things your question brings up is a great point in terms of kind of strategy and historical levies in the district. So just to put it in perspective, the sheet that we track it on has been since 1985. There were levies before that, but since 1985, we've tracked, and we've had 25 new operating levies on the ballot, and only 7 of them have passed. So that's 28% of the levies have passed, which is a very small amount. If you take a look at when the district got in financial challenges, they had small levies that addressed deficit spending and just pieced them through to the next 3 to 4 years where they weren't growing, right? It was backfilling a deficit. So one of the things that I would add to the plate of thought for the board is so that's why the strategy was go for a longer-term levy that would last a little bit longer because the community's past history in terms of supporting levies. And now we're in a predicament where people are saying you have too much money, which is just simply the results of a longer-term levy. So if that's the case, and we feel that the community is going to have a keen eye, and I just want to be clear, this is not a Strongsville issue. Cash balances is a statewide issue that's a legislative issue that has been talked about over the last 3 or 4 years. That since COVID, school districts across the state have healthier cash balances, and legislatively, what are we going to do about it? So that's just a side note. But if we take a look at that, we've got to look at what is the sweet spot between, if there is one, between good financial management practices to where we don't get into this cycle of we are just passing a levy to keep our head above water. Because that's not good for the kids or the district. Versus what is a levy that then keeps the cash balance at a area or a level that meets community expectations. And so that's where I haven't had the conversation, but my invitation to our opposition is, tell us your number. We've had ambiguous conversations about you have too healthy of a cash balance. Well, plant a flag in the ground and say, here's what we think is an acceptable cash balance as you go through your levy cycle. I think I would be open to that conversation and listening to that because to me, that's the crux of what we do moving forward. If you, I'm not just talking about the opposition, but if the community, if one of the reasons, there's many, right? But if one of the reasons is the cash balance was too much, spend it down, then come to us when you need it, and we will or will not support you, whatever they decide to do, then let's talk specifically, what is that cash balance? So we can be on the same page of our community moving forward and plan accordingly. So just something to think about as we move forward.
I think that is a good idea. I think to do a survey like that, because I feel like that was a lot of the complaint. We have too much money. Then the other complaint was, now it's a permanent levy. So, you know,
After
the
housing stuff went
renewals
up.
didn't go, but then when we put permanent, then they didn't like that. So, I mean, we, you know, us as representatives, we work for the people. You know, we got to figure out what is it that they want and how can we, like, all come together and get it right. And I'm not sure how you do that. I mean, unless you know, like Cameron said, you come up with a number. Would it be okay if we had 20 million? Would you then support us? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what that number is or where they look like it might be okay.
I think one of the challenges that I'm having is, part of me wants to do that, right? Where, what's your number? What's going to make you happy? But part of me feels, so I feel beholden to the stakeholders, but I also feel beholden to the students. And I know factually, per numbers and the way that our system works, that what they're asking us to do is not what's best. And so I feel torn. Like, what do I do? If I do and just spend down, right? Because that's the easier thing to do right now. I know the hole we're going to be in, right? Even though they might not see or admit that the hole exists. But if I don't, and I just do what I think the numbers say we should do, then we can't get it to pass anyway. So I think that's my biggest challenge for how to decide to move forward. How do I make a decision I know is going to hurt us in the long term, even if it's what the people say they want? I don't know how to solve that problem.
That is.
Yeah, and that's why I
have
want to
nailed it
say it
on the
out.
head.
I want to say it out loud because I
Yeah.
don't think
That's it.
that the people understand that, right? Like, I can listen to you and do your bidding. That doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it good for our students.
One of the things, and I think I'm going to give everyone one more chance to share an opinion, and then we'll wrap up, because I do think we could talk for hours, and there's also some shell shock that I think we need to digest. I do think what we need to consider and think about is a balancing act. On the one hand, it's seductive to just say, community, tell us the amount you want to support so we can budget to it and move on. But that's also abdicating our responsibility. And our responsibility is to answer to the community with the best education we possibly can deliver. And that's the rub. And I do think we need to have dialogue, conversation about the challenges that we see, whether it's buildings, whether it's educational needs. Educational needs today for our students are vastly different than what they were 20 years ago. But I don't think that's well understood by a vast majority of people. And I also think we just need to acknowledge that our timing was wrong. The inflationary period that we've been under has been difficult for a lot of our families. And we may just need to be patient and continue that conversation, but have that balancing act. Part of it is that conversation. It's the levy cycle that you alluded to is not well understood, which is not well understood as a way of saying nobody believes it. They're just looking at the bank account and saying there's 77 million. And we have a really strong message that this is good financial stewardship, but we're going to have to double down and make sure that people understand it and believe it. But the practical things that we need to do is, one, we need to give the administration marching orders in December. Two, we need to extend an invitation again to the Strongsville GOP to come to our finance meetings and give them the opportunity again to share with us if 77 million is too much, what is the number that we should budget to, because that would help us as far as how aggressive or unaggressive cuts need to be. And if they don't take us up on the offer, then we hold them to that. We have been honest brokers time and time again. It is really easy. I was there, Cameron was there. When you don't have money in the budget, it is really easy to manage. Everything is no. We are at a point where this is the hard part. The hard part is to know that you could just write checks and spend down the balance, but then we're just going to be going, we're back in that position of we're just trying to backfill and get forward. It was too much work to get us to where we are now to just flippantly say, fine, we're going to continue the course. We're going to continue to do what's best for our students and what's going to position our students, not, and I said this before, the voter, the advice that was given to the voter was about one vote, yay or nay. It was just a cash decision. Our decisions are about 20 years. Our decisions about, I have Nolan. I have Nolan, who's in the first or second grade. And we have to make decisions that are going to affect him in the second grade and make sure that when he graduates high school, he is so well prepared to represent Strongsville. Whether it's college, career, whatever it is, that's our mission. And it's a lot harder to just say, I'm just going to say no, or I'm just going to say yes. But it's our job and we take it. And we want it because we know how important it is and how impactful it is. And we know that Nolan's counting on us. So we'll take the message that we got, and I'm going to redouble my efforts, and I'm going to ask everyone else to redouble their efforts because it's good work that we're doing. And again, fortunately, we're in a position that we're not where we were 20 years ago, where it's like, well, cut the soap in half and see what happens tomorrow, right? So I'm going to get off my soapbox because I'm getting a little excited. Anyone else?
I think it's, before any conversations are had, I think it's important to kind of say what Cameron said, like 11% of your income as a family goes away. What cuts do you make to put it in real terms for families and people? When you think of $70 million in the bank, that's a lot of money for a family. For a business, for probably the biggest business in our city, and having the CEO or the treasurer of our business, it isn't what it is for a household income when you consider it being the school district, and managing how many schools are in the district, and how many teachers are in the district, how many students are in the district. So I think translating it into what that equals in a household for people that don't understand that, because I'll be honest, how many times do we say, George, can you explain this to us? Can you break this down to understand it this way? It's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of heavy stuff. I hated math. I still hate math. That's why, I'll be honest with you. And I think seeing it that way of, okay, taking away 11% of your income, what do you have to do to make changes there? Are you still gonna be able to live where you live? Are you still gonna be able to eat the same things that you eat? Are you still gonna have the same extracurricular activities for your kids? So I think that's a good way of doing it too. Say you're a $100,000 income house. Say you're putting it that way.
Appreciate everyone's healthy conversation and discussion, and we will commit to get you your answers in December.
Mr. McElwa, at the next board meeting, we have to adopt the 5-year forecast. So I'll prepare and present that.
You're going to present no more if it passes 5-year
Right, so
forecast.
It'll just be with obviously that out. And then I won't include any of what we talked about tonight, as that will be decided in December, so
Yeah.
we can adjust after that.
The sooner you can get us a preliminary copy, that'll allow us to do our homework and review it so that we're ready for the meeting.
Okay.
George, one last question. When is the next renewal? Is it fall 26? Okay.
So what?
We have another renewal that comes up in November of 2026.
So
So
it
2 years from right now.
So
It finishes collecting, not that anyone looked at this afternoon. December 31st, 2027 for tax year 2026.
Yeah.
The soonest we can be on the ballot is November of 2026.
Correct.
So. yeah.
And the latest is November of 27.
I'm sorry?
The latest is
It's
November.
November of 2027. So the good news is we have time to plan, but we don't have tons. Okay, next on our agenda is,
So facilities usage discussion. So I bring this to the board, linked, it's under public, but there's two. We've got the policies and the administrative guidelines that are related to use of our district property, use of our district facilities. So the two with the asterisks are the two that I'm going to talk from tonight, if you want to open those up. And yeah, George, if you just want to stay on that one for now. So let me kind of give you the scenario of what we have. So people, as you know, are allowed to rent our facilities. Depending on what kind of group they are, depends on what they are charged. So George, if you can scroll down on the one that you're on right now to the last page. And so you can see a couple yellow highlights that I just wanted to call out. So basically, that says, what that's saying in B is, hey, if you are a nonprofit in the community, and also if you're a school-affiliated group, a PTA, something like that, where you're a nonprofit, you can use our facilities free of charge unless you generate additional charges. So for example, it's mentioned there, if you come in and you want to come in on a Saturday or a Sunday, and custodians usually don't work that day, you are going to pay for that employee. We don't have a flat rate. We say, here's the custodian that worked, here's how much they were paid for that time, here's the bill that you owe. So nonprofits, they don't have any facility usage fees. They only have fees if staff have to come in special for their event. What C is saying is all other groups are paid not only that, but also school facility rental fees on a per hour basis. So George, if you go to 7510B, and then just stop right there for a second. So if we look at another administrative guideline, 7510B, it gets into, if you can write the most confusing administrative guideline ever, it's this one.
Who wrote it?
So this has a bunch of, it's references to other references, but it's basically saying what I just said. Hey, here's the fees for student groups. Those are the same fees for community groups affiliated with the schools. And then if you scroll down a little bit more, George, community nonprofit groups with 501c3 status are the same as that. And then we get into some different ones that have to pay some different fees. So the one that we're talking about tonight, yeah, if you stick there, George, on E, is two things. Already said, if you are a for-profit group, you pay any additional charges we incur plus rental fees. And then if you charge admission, you pay 150% of those rental fees. So there's a kicker on that if you're going to use our facilities to not only, you're not just a for-profit business, but you're going to charge tickets. And then you can see it's 150% of the fees, you can see all the fees down there. Here's what we've seen an increase. So with all that, that's the foundation. Here's where I need your guidance. Recently, we've seen an increase in people or groups that want to use our facilities that are for-profit groups or have shared relationships. You know, you can use our property, we can use your property, and we'd have a different agreement. And so we have another for-profit group that's out there that is asked to be able to use our facilities for the community youth basketball league. And so that's the most recent example that's there. What I need direction on from the board is, pathway A is the administrative guidelines are the administrative guidelines, you implement them as written. Which means I tell any nonprofit group, you pay any extra fees plus rental fees. And if you want to sell tickets or a gate to get in, you're going to pay 150% of those per hour. So that's option A. Option B is
Option A is continuing the course or a deviation from the course?
continuing the course.
Okay.
Option B is, if we feel that the group has a mutual benefit to the district and/or the community, that we deviate from the administrative guideline by creating a separate contract with that group to say, here's what we're going to give you. In lieu of that, here's what you're going to give us. Because we feel it's a benefit to the overall community, the board approves that contract, which in essence supersedes the administrative guideline. Right now, I can't do it, superintendent, I don't have the authority to do anything but implement this, and that's what we've done. So that's the part where I need direction. Cameron, stay the course, establish a contract and bring it to the board, and the board will decide whether or not they like it. Or, before you create a contract, come to us at a board meeting, share what the pitch is, and we'll give you direction as to whether we want you to explore it further. So that's where I need some guidance.
How often does this happen?
So it hasn't happened a whole lot, but it tends to happen in the basketball arena. So I think we've had a couple. I know we've just had one that we formalized a contract that the board approved with baseball, a baseball group recently. So this is not a significant piece of it, but now that we're at 2, I just want clear direction as to how to move forward. So it is typically in the sports realm and use of our facilities for sports.
Is there any time of the essence? Do you have any issues at this moment?
I do.
Okay.
And so the issue is with basketball.
Okay.
So right now, our youth basketball, how all youth basketball leagues work is you have the Strongsville youth travel team. Those travel teams that are in the same group together hire a league to run the league. We are just members of that league. The league that's running everything has to find sites. We have been a site for them for a handful of years now. And, we have 5 courts, I believe, that we use. And we use the high school and the middle school, there's 5 courts. That means Strongsville parents have a lot of time where they're just going to see their kids play basketball in Strongsville. I think they have another Avon. I'm looking at Dave because I know his son played in your, I think.
Anywhere from 3 to 5 different sites per weekend.
Yeah, so we are from what I've been told, we're one of the largest sites in terms of the number of courts that we have available. So there is a benefit. Our kids have more home games. Our parents don't have to travel as much. The time of the essence is travel basketball is starting. And if we're not going to move forward with this, I need to let them know because they have to procure other sites to have their games that wouldn't be Strongsville. Up until this point, recently they've been able to make do without charging a gate. They now are charging a gate or charging tickets to admit, fee to get in. So what they are saying is we can afford the custodial fees that are there, which are close to $10,000. We can continue to, since you're a site, there's a donation back to the district. There's other things that they do, and we appreciate it, but it's not a significant donation that would offset the rental fees. So that's sometimes we have, like with baseball, it was significant. There was a significant give and take for that. This is more of a, do we have, because it's a youth, it's our kids, it's also other communities coming in, but do we want to provide that service and go get into a contract with this league? So that's the time of the essence, Mr. Micko, is I've got to either tell them not this year or there is interest because they've got to finalize schedules for the league.
I don't see a problem as long as it's not interfering with anything that, like, our own kids, like, our school, it's not taking away from anything. Is
Yeah.
anyone getting mad because there's not gyms?
No, we have a rule that says we take priority, so it would never be an issue where we wouldn't have first priority of it. So that would be, that'd be a moot point.
We also have a relationship with the city. They use our courts too also,
Mhm.
correct? That would not affect this?
No, because the city does that on the weekdays and Saturdays, yeah. No, so this is all Sundays.
So if we get you, is it okay to get you an answer by the next board meeting, or you need direction today?
They probably want to start.
I believe, I can ask. I believe last time I talked to him, he said he's got to make decisions by next week.
I mean, I don't have a problem with it, as long as it's not interfering with anything that our school has to do. I don't see why we,
What are the downsides? Like, what would be a reason why not to do it?
I mean, I would say two downsides, and they're not quantifiable. One downside, and the reason we or assess the facility fee is just wear and tear on our facilities. That money goes back into a budget that helps fund upgrades, not really upgrades, but repairs, routine maintenance to those things. So again, X amount of weeks, games all Sunday on our courts, in our buildings, there's wear and tear that is there over time. The other downfall would be, at what level would you say no? And there's been good points that have been made of, I'll call Dave out because he made the point, but leagues like this, they use our facility for the winter, but they run fall, spring, summer. And so there would have to be delineation as to why are we saying yes to this, but no to the others. Those are the two off the top of my head shortcomings.
The other history, and someone was there when this was done, we spent quite a bit of time coming up with these categories and tried to have a rationale for each level, because we were dealing with, everybody had an agreement, and the agreements did not sit well as a whole. This one seemed to favor this group, this one seemed to favor this group, and it had become a bit of a mess to manage, because invariably, one group would find out about the other group's agreement, and hey, why are you treating them differently than us? And so one of the reasons I have pause is we're kind of getting away from that principle. And again, it's reasonable. The arguments for it are all reasonable. If you need a decision today, we'll make a decision today. If we can push it to the next meeting, I think that gives us some time to think it through.
I can look as we go through to find the date exactly. We can continue on and come back to it?
Yeah, that works.
Okay. All right. So moving on, nothing for business services. Under curriculum, we have two items. So the first, be resolved upon my recommendation that the Board of Education enters into an agreement with McKean Education Group for the amount of $13,980.63 for one part-time Title I instructor to serve as pupils attending Holy Family School under Title I funding, administered to approved non-public schools by local districts. Under number two, this is passed, so it's in the past, but because of the state meet, we do it afterwards. So be it resolved upon my recommendation that permission be granted to the Strongsville High School girls cross-country team who traveled to Columbus to participate in the state championship meet. The competition took place the 1st and 2nd of November, and transportation was via district van, and expenses were paid by the athletic boosters.
Can I offer congratulations?
Yeah, please.
Because Hannah was
Yeah.
sixth in the state.
Yeah,
So congratulations to Hannah and the team.
that was phenomenal,
It's good
absolutely.
that we're approving this.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it might
Yeah,
forfeit
otherwise
it might forfeit the winning.
Under student services, be resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education enters into an agreement with STEPS Educational Group for the placement of a student with disabilities for this school year with a start date of October 21st, 2024, including extended school year, in the amount of $69,666.16. Unless there's any question on that or other items, that concludes my report, and as you move on, I'll look to see the date.
Next on our agenda is adoption of consent calendar. Action by the Board of Education and adoption of consent calendar at this point of the agenda means all items in the agenda denoted as type action consent are adopted by one single motion unless requested otherwise. Do I have any otherwise? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Cobain. Any discussion? Hearing none, please take the roll.
Ms. Stalchek,
Yes.
Ms. Cobain,
Yes.
Mr. Miko,
Yes,
Mrs. Hausum,
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell.
Yes.
motion carries. Do we have any miscellaneous?
I had one, because I know parents are really, like, worried about the whole drug testing thing. And, so I had an experience, I didn't realize it, but my granddaughter got drug tested. She's in 7th grade. And, her and her girlfriend, and she just laughed about it and said it was fine, and there was a lady at the door. So I felt like they got through it okay, and I just want people to, I didn't know anything about it until my daughter said, hey, she got drug tested today. But it went well for her, and, you know, she wasn't frightened or upset, so I want people to know that, because I know parents do, they do worry. And so it went well, as far as that group was concerned.
Thank you.
They're 7th graders, so.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I will remind the community that Friday in Mentor, the football team is going to go against, is going to beat Mentor to continue their journey in the high school football playoffs. But congratulations to the team and to Coach Trusnick. Whether it's well-known or not, that the last win was the first win since 2008. 2008, the first playoff win by the varsity football team and at home, which made it double exciting. So if you're inclined, go visit them in Mentor and cheer them on as they win. Do you have an answer for us?
It needs to be now.
Okay.
He's got to publish schedules on the November 15th week, so.
Does anyone have any reservations? I know I do.
I think I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, right? It gets tricky because we just approved the baseball one. But I do see that as vastly different in that, that was mutually beneficial. Like, we are literally swapping facilities. I feel like that's very different than what we're being asked of now. And so I do worry about setting precedent of doing side contracts all the time. That makes that, what is it called, administrative guideline kind of useless. I wasn't here for the creation of it, so I can't speak to that, but I do understand why we would have a norm. So I get a little bit nervous, even though I've benefited from having my kids play here in Strongsville, and I get that. But that was also before there was a fee, and that makes it a little cringy for me too.
What do you mean a fee, Michelle?
The difference now is they're gonna charge a gate fee, so like to go see my own kid play, even though I'm in Strongsville, I still have to pay a gate fee.
Oh, okay. I
Whereas-
didn't know if you were paying like extra.
No, just the gate fee, but every week, you know, and if I have to bring my other kids with me, then I gotta pay that, so they're gonna benefit from the wear and tear on our facility. Makes me a little uncomfortable. I could go both ways, but I do have some reservations, and that was the question.
I'm the same. I could go either way. I mean, I see the benefit of having it here for the kids and growing, you know, the interest in the sport, and it's a feeder program then for our sports. But again, I see the same point of the wear and tear.
Yeah, and it does, I mean, if you think about economic value, there is some to our community businesses. So I get that too.
And to the look of Strongsville,
Yeah,
welcoming these kids,
Yeah.
using our facilities. Don't forget that.
yeah, so there's certainly some benefits to it, but they're not, it's not a one-to-one.
I think them charging the gate fee is kind of the changing point of me, of feeling like I can go both ways, but where do you stop it from setting a precedent for other people to be able to say, well, we do the exact same thing, it's just a different sport or a different time of year?
So what I would suggest is, I think you all have reasonable and insightful answers. And we can instruct Cameron to say, no, not right now. If he can delay so that we can think it through and come back at our mid-November meeting. But it also seems like there's the will that we should revisit the administrative guideline and see if that's where we need to address the issue. Because I don't think this is the last time Cameron's going to have the question.
Right.
But I think it's reasonable to say, right, we're not going to make a quick decision. We understand the request. If you can be patient, we'll have a final decision for you in November. If you can't be patient, we understand, and we'll still refer it to the policy committee. Who else is?
Haley and I.
Haley, to the policy committee to say, do we need to adjust it to make it more responsible? Everyone can agree with that?
That's fine.
You have your direction.
Okay.
Next on our agenda is executive session for the reasons of.
Prepare for negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment, and to consider the employment of a public employee and to consider the discipline of a public employee.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Kilbane. Any discussion? George, take the roll.
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes,
Ms. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
motion carries. We will enter into executive session at 8:35. We have no expectation of further business. Thank you for your attention, and go Mustangs, beat Mentor.